Hello, folks.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Here we are. Cover your ears. You know what we're about to do to you.
And it's going to be loud.
So, in case you're not counting, let me just be quite clear. This is our number 3, our third talk on the ethics of mediumship. And today we're going to talk about honesty, respect for the spirit world, and building trust, not with your sitter, not with the people that are silly enough to pay you money for your inability to give them readings, but for building up that real trust with spirit, because if you don't have the support of spirit, you ain't going to get anywhere. Now,
Absolutely.
Before we get into that, however, let me give you our usual bits of news. Now, first off, you'll see that there's 3 faces: me, the miniature one, and the nice one. This is Whitney. Now, you may have noticed that we've had a couple of personality issues on this between me and Devi. In other words, we fight. Well, that's the whole purpose of this.
That's the point.
That's the whole point, to have debates. But me being the overbearing Scotsman, I have tended to be, as Devi says,
verbose.
That's not how she put it. She said she doesn't believe Marc actually breathes. So stop.
I didn't say that. He doesn't take a breath so I can edge into the conversation. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not like this. Anyway, problem solved. Meet Whitney. Whitney is our host. She's coming to work for the organization. That's Marc, Stuart, Medium Training, in case you didn't know who we were. She's doing administration for us, but she's also volunteered, sucker, to come on Tuesdays, not Wednesdays. I'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to be handing over to her very shortly. I'll be shutting up and letting her take point. Other bits of news to give you. Number 1, we have switched from Wednesday nights to Tuesday nights. No particular reason for it, just we're doing too much on every night. We are continuing with the 3 training circles on Wednesdays. Yep, on Wednesdays and Sundays. The Sunday circle is coming forward an hour, not for this circle. So everybody that's registered at this point, fine. But anybody registering for the next one will just watch out. The time is changing and coming forward an hour. There is a reason for it, which I'm not going to go into. Well, actually, I suppose I should do. We're starting up a new training circle. We put groups of people into different circles when they sign up. So there's going to be a new training circle on Sunday, and we don't want the 2 circles overlapping. I'm not leading that circle. That circle is going to be led by Devi. So Devi will be dropping out of coming online with me for the recruitment circle. Let's just call it the screening circle earlier in the day. And she'll be doing the training circle. So that's one of the few occasions you're going to get to see the 2 of us working together. We'll either be Wednesday circle and tonight on the streaming event. Nothing else to report that we didn't report last week. Newsletter for March will be coming out probably in about a week to a week and a half. We have all the events for Walks with Marc and Ying and Cards with Marc are now set up. The end of March, we'll see the webinar that we're doing, half of it on AI and half of it on the job that you want to do that AI can't do. In other words, it's going to be me doing readings for about 2 hours, depending on the number of tickets we sell. The other streamed events, well, here's a wee advert for one of them.
Glasgow Riverside Museum, my favorite one. 999? Or in America, is that 911?
And there's C-3PO in the background. That's interesting.
999 again? So, didn't get a chance to go on today. We will do another trip back, but this is what's called the tall ship at the Riverside Museum. I see it, don't worry.
So basically, the Riverside Museum is an example of the types of place that Ying and I are going for walks, not on Sunday, but usually Saturday. We'll film about 2-3 hours of us walking around, and it'll be edited down. This walk lasts for about 30 minutes. The second one at Gladstone's Lawn, which is the oldest building in Edinburgh, which dates back about 500 years, and that one lasts about an hour. So that's about it. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to hand over
Right.
who is going to take over as the host. And over to you, Whitney.
Hi. Today's topic is honesty, respect for the spirit world, and building trust. Marc mentioned it's our third time covering this topic, so I'm interested to see what is going to be added to the conversation. Are you guys ready to start discussing?
Of course.
As soon as the dog starts barking.
Okay, so I'm going to break this down into 4 bullet points, and then Devi and I are going to scream at each other about each bullet point because I know we have different opinions about this. First off, honesty in spiritual work. Now, what do I mean? I mean with that, honesty with ourselves, the consequence of dishonesty in readings and mediumship, and how honesty fosters genuine spiritual growth. Now, that's a bit vague, but being honest
with yourself and others, that is something that means you're a little bit more spiritually open. If you try to lie all the time and deceive others, that means you're more spiritually closed.
Now, this is actually one area that gets a little bit grey.
Okay.
Because in Scotland,
before we get into the grey area, I do want to set an intention for an open and engaging conversation. So let's all take a breath before we start actually discussing.
Right.
Yeah, I've breathed out fire.
Yep, just in through the nose, out through the mouth calmly.
Okay. Go ahead.
Here's where I'm going to get controversial, and I'm actually going to attack American mediumship.
Oh no!
If you work in Scotland now, what I mean by work in Scotland is you're a church medium. Now, just for clarity, that means you go to a different church every time period. Now, some mediums do it monthly, some mediums do it 6 monthly. I used to do 2 or 3 churches a week, but that was pre-COVID. So when they go and work in churches, you sometimes get mediums that are working psychically and not working spiritually. So this is a big criticism that we have of American mediums. There are so many mediums out there that are psychics and they are working psychically, but they claim to be working spiritually, which is a lie. Maybe a self-lie, because they maybe don't.
But you're right. So many times I hear people, they're going to give me a mediumship reading when they're not. They're giving me a psychic reading and telling me about me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're covering gaga basics here, but what is a spiritual reading? It's where you connect with a spirit on the other side. You get evidence of, I'm making this up, that old man died of a heart attack, had a moustache, used a walking stick, was in a wheelchair. You give that as the evidence, and the sitter says, yes, that could be one of 2 people. So the spirit comes back and he says, bananas. And you're sitting there going, what? And you say bananas. And the sitter says, "Oh my God, yeah, that makes perfect sense," because he used to watch the TV series Bananas and he was obsessed with it. So things like that have happened in readings I've
Yeah.
given, so don't
Yeah.
laugh. But
Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah, and then you get confirmation of who the spirit is, and then you give the message from the spirit, hopefully evidential. You don't want, again, you cringe when you get readings, and he says he loves you, and he's going
All
to
those
support you.
generic, he's very proud of you, or all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
But that's another side of a psychic reading. So what do I mean? Let's just say I give a psychic reading to Whitney. I read Whitney. So I pick up that Whitney's father. I'm making this up, folks. So don't come back. Don't flood us with messages of congratulation, of sympathy for Whitney. But I say to Whitney, your father died very recently, didn't he? Because I'm picking up, she's grieving. I'm picking up that she's been to her father's funeral. So Whitney comes back and says, "Yeah, my father died last week." And I then just turn it into, "And your dad sends his love and his support, and you shouldn't be crying." Again, it's non-evidential. So,
and they're just making it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is unethical and not being honest.
Yeah. So anyway, let's not get too bogged down in psychic readings, but self-honesty with yourself, self-honesty with your sitter. If you're going to give them a psychic reading, tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, "I'm reading you. I'm not connecting with spirit."
Right. The psychic readings and spiritual readings, evidential mediumship are two separate things.
Yeah. And then, of course, if we're on the subject of dishonesty, Devi mentioned it a couple of times about being dishonest. I can give you a case of a Scottish medium that was caught out being dishonest. He locally to where I've never actually met the guy, but he's got a reputation for doing this. He gets people to sit in the audience, and he actually on stage does false readings. He gets somebody to stand up. He goes to them. I don't know whether he makes it up or whether he just gets his friends and he
Right.
gives them readings, but blah, 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 blah. And then the audience go, "Oh, wonderful." And again,
So he plants people in the audience?
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Oh my God.
That's a lot.
That's a big lie. Yeah.
Now, see, again, this is where we do things very differently, because if I'm on stage, let's say I've sold 50 tickets, I will give 50 readings. Nobody will leave that theatre there'll be short readings, and I teach everybody how to do that. So everybody that comes to us to get training gets taught our methodologies. They get taught how to do what I call rapid fire readings, whereas most mediums will maybe only do maximum a dozen readings. So if you've got 3 or 4 friends planted in the audience, you might give a reading. "Oh, I'm sorry, I got that." You make it generic. Then you go to the next person, and it's so specific, it's mind blowing. But what everybody doesn't know is it's a complete falsehood, because it's somebody you know. You may very well have connected to the spirit, so let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But again, it's somebody you're familiar with, etc. Then you go to somebody else, you keep it generic. Then you go to your third plant. Now, again, it's falsehood, and it's what gives real mediumship a bad name.
Exactly.
Okay. So anything else to add on to that, Devi, before we move on?
No, I think you covered it. I agree with you on that one. Basically, you got to be honest. And you're not dishonest. You obviously you don't want to diagnose or tell somebody about a medical condition or that somebody is dying. That's not being dishonest. That is protecting yourself and your client.
Yeah, but that's a I suppose that really comes down into the last point we're talking about, trust between mediums and the client.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. Whitney, you got anything you want to?
Not for this one particularly. I appreciate you guys' openness in speaking of your experience. I think something I've witnessed a lot that happens in New Orleans is people will go and sit out on the French Quarter and they'll have like a booth and things like that. And there was this phenomenon of I went in as someone looking for a reading, and I wasn't really being honest about my intention. And I was asking like for an educational reading, but like everything in me was like, no, get a love reading. And the psychic actually picked up on that and just did the reading that way. So I do think that as someone who's looking for a reading, it is important to also be open and honest about when something's resonating or when it's not.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah. Actually, that is actually a very valid point. There is nothing worse than having a sitter saying yes, 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 yes,
Oh, and it's not true.
and then immediately after it, they go away and get. I mean, this has actually happened to me. I had somebody for a reading. I can't remember when, and I haven't replied to the. I haven't replied. I got a bad review. I haven't replied to the review, but during the sitting, she was taking it all. Yes, 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 yes. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And apparently she wasn't happy with it. Wasn't what she was. I don't know whether it was not what she was expecting or whether she was just saying yes when she couldn't take it. But she then went up and put, "This is a terrible medium," all the rest of it. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and reply to
You
it.
need to reply to that, absolutely.
Just haven't had the time. But that ties in. If you're at a reading and you can't take it, tell the medium. Be honest.
Oh,
You're not there to make the medium feel good. You're there to get a reading yourself. Thanks for that, Whitney. Yes, honesty works both ways.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So respecting the spirit world. Now, what do I mean by that, Devi?
Well, you mean understanding the sacred nature of spirit communication. You need to set boundaries with the spirits and your spirit guides, and understand that yes, your spirit guides and other ancestors and spirits will test you.
I could talk about this for the next 2 hours, never mind the next 20 minutes.
Well, how about give me 2 minutes on your thoughts on this?
Okay.
I'll have a timer going too.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, number one. How many people come to our training? I mean, this is exactly what Devi was talking about. How many people come to our training circles and they're open? I mean, we did one. When was it? Sunday.
Sunday.
We had. Was it 6 people came, including Whitney?
6 people came. 4 people ended up, or 5 people ended up staying.
Yeah. We'll come back. We'll come back to the one that left in a minute. But of the 5 people that stayed, 4 of them said they were open. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean? That means you're not setting boundaries. You're not having the conversation. You're not opening and closing. Now, this is not a training session, and I'm not going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about that. But that's a consequence of what Devi was just talking about. So here's the symptoms: sleepless nights, waking up at a regular time on a regular bit. Say like, example, 3 o'clock. You're waking up at 3 a.m. every morning. You have premonitions constantly. Now, yeah, that feels great, but you shouldn't be, because it means you're accepting spiritual communications without protection. And again, this is not a talk about being open and closed, so let's not get sidetracked.
No, it's not. But I did wake up at 3 a.m. this morning and realized I was still open.
Okay.
It happens.
And fourth, and again, this is more a consequence, but you, over a period of time, you get tireder and tireder and tireder until the point where you literally collapse and you have to take a day off or 2 days off work or a weekend to recharge your batteries. Now that's, again, I'm putting that as a sign, but that's a consequence of the first 3.
Yes.
Next, not having trust that spirit will work with you. Now, this doesn't apply to people that are just starting out. This applies to people that are training, that are learning, and they don't put their faith in spirit. Now, I can spot people like that a mile off. I can spot mediums like that a mile off. You see a medium, and they're sitting like this.
Yeah.
They're reaching out for spirit to give them the evidence. Come on, spirit, give me it, so that they can then look good. Well, I'm not saying they're doing it to look good, but they're doing it to give them.
To entertain.
No, I don't. I'm being sarcastic.
Oh, okay.
I don't mean they're sitting like this. I mean they're literally sitting, waiting for spirit to give them the evidence.
Oh, okay. They're sitting instead of reaching out. Okay.
So don't read in too much to the body language. I mean they're sitting, waiting for spirit to give them the evidence. You go to a circle, anybody's circle, and you will see the circle leader saying, does anybody have a message to give? And then maybe 2 or 3 people will put their hands up out of say a dozen. If you've got faith in spirit, and this is the way we train people, this is why I use some techniques in the circles which terrify people. And we don't do it, let's be blunt, we don't do this in the screening circles, so don't panic.
No.
But once you are getting trained by me properly, we've got a number of exercises where I will say to you, give 3 readings in 5 minutes.
Yes.
You're sitting there going, what?
And I always panic.
Yeah. And if you get over the panic, it's so that you've got the faith from spirit to just go to somebody and give them the message. What do I mean by that? You know that your guides are going to have a spirit waiting at, let's say I was doing this tonight, I would go to Devi and I would know that my guides had a spirit waiting beside Devi to connect with me. And the minute I go to Devi and I get Devi's, yes, you can work with me, I'll suddenly just get it like that. I'm not sitting waiting for the spirit to come forward and give me the evidence so that I feel confident. So that's having trust.
Well, that's trust with your spirit guide.
Yeah, your spirit guide and the spirits that are waiting for you.
Yes.
But you're right.
I feel like it can also boil down to how much someone trusts themselves and their ability. I think people can get caught up in not trusting what they're getting because they try to dismiss it as being something that is from them rather than from spirit. But when we're open, that's like the time for spirit to communicate to and through us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other side of what I was just talking about. You're getting the evidence and you're ignoring it. Or as Whitney said, you just don't have the confidence to give it.
Right.
I mean, how many times, Devi, have you had evidence that just sounds totally ludicrous? I mean,
I have. I've had some really strange evidence.
Yeah.
Like, why am I seeing boiled potatoes?
Yeah.
And the sitter will go, oh, I know.
Yeah. Or here's another example. This is a real reading that I gave about 3 years ago. I was in a church. No, actually, it wasn't a church. Yeah, it was a miners' club. You don't get those in America, but it's just local community. We call them miners' clubs because we've got lots of towns that used to have mines. The town grew up around the mine, so they have a social club, and they just call it a miners' club. So anyway, I was on stage, gave a reading to a man who was actually a member of the aristocracy, believe it or not, but that's another story for another day. And I said, look, I'm just going to give you what I get. This just doesn't make any sense. It's a shed, which is a wooden hut in the garden, and it's literally been blown away by the wind. And so I can see the walls of it being ripped apart, the roof being ripped off. Now that, maybe in America, where you get hurricanes and tornadoes, that could be conceivable. But here in Scotland, where nothing like that ever happens, never, for that to have happened, it's like one maybe there might be one instance once a century. It's that rare.
Yeah.
And I thought this must be symbolic. I said, look, I'll give you what I've got, but it must be symbolic. This couldn't be real. And he looked me in the face and he said, yeah, we actually had a storm in the garden and it happened. The roof of the shed got blown away. And he floored me.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, I almost didn't give that. I literally didn't trust myself to give that as a message, but thank God I did. And he actually joined the circle, but that's another day, another story for another day.
Right. And we need to hurry because we're coming up on a half hour.
Oh God, right.
And we've not yet talked about trust between mediums and their clients.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Well, how do you get trust between yourself and your client? Well, one thing you don't do is you don't give messages. There are certain bits of messages that you just do not give. Devi, you want to talk about that?
You never give a diagnosis unless you're not a doctor, unless you are a doctor medium, I suppose. But you don't want to give a diagnosis. You don't want to tell somebody they're dying or one of their loved ones is dying. You don't want to make sure you don't tell anybody they have a fatal disease. Oh my gosh, that would be horrible. Be honest about what the legal side of what you're doing, and saying it's just for entertainment purposes only. That way they can't sue you if something you said didn't come true.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Or if it did come true.
Or if it, yeah. I suppose, but you're not supposed to tell them that stuff, right?
correct. It's an area that you have to. I was going to say be careful, but careful's the wrong word. You have to use your experience. You have to use common sense. I mean, diagnosing is one that gets very grey. So let me give you an example. You get a very sore arm. Now, a sore arm is not a diagnosis. A sore arm is a symptom. But clearly, it could imply that there's I mean, let's just take an obvious one. It could be rheumatism. So the stupid statement is, you've got rheumatism, or you're going to get rheumatism. That's exactly what Devi just said.
Now you don't do that.
Under any
You say your arm is hurting. Am I right?
Yeah.
Or the other alternative is you say to the person, look, I'm getting a symptom of what I think is rheumatism. Do you know anybody around you who is suffering from rheumatism?
Yes.
If they then come back and say, oh my God, I just got diagnosed with rheumatism, then you're on safe ground. You can talk about the rheumatism. If they come back and say, my mother suffers severely from rheumatism in her arm, then you've got permission to continue. Now, let's be clear, you have not diagnosed rheumatism.
No, because rheumatism isn't actually a diagnosis. So, yeah.
Okay, but whatever. So let's not get broken down in semantics. What I'm saying is...
And I think that's what, in the circle on Sunday, that's what I did, where my hands were hurting, and I heard arthritis to kind of describe why they were hurting. And so I asked, do you know anyone with arthritis? Do you have it yourself? And it was confirmed that she already had the diagnosis. And I'm saying, okay, well, this isn't a diagnosis of it, but this reading has to do with what you're using for that.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on, Whitney. So, and it may also be that the message is not about the rheumatism. It may very well be that, for example, in the example where they came back and said, my mother's got the rheumatism then disappears. And you know you're not here to talk about the rheumatism. You were just guided with that as a way to talk about the mother.
Right.
Some mediums are clairvoyant, like I am clairvoyant, and I just get, I'm talking about your mother. I'll get evidence about the mother. So I might say your mother's got rheumatism, but you might be early in your stage, like Whitney just gave there, and she's saying, do you know somebody that's got rheumatism in their hands? And the sitter comes back and says, yes, that's my father. He's got rheumatism in the hands. As I said, it may very well be that you're talking about the rheumatism, the message is about the rheumatism, but it may just be a way of getting you to the father, and then you suddenly get something about a building contract. You see a piece of paper in a building, and you say, okay, well, is there something going on with a building, a legal thing, maybe a contract or something? And then they come back and say, oh, we just hired some builders to do an extension on, or my father just hired some builders to do an extension onto the house. So one leads to the other, if that makes sense. But we're not here to do training. So
absolutely. But anyway, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's pretty much about it. Unless anybody wants to add anything, we're running out of time.
I think something that could be interesting to discuss for the next stream is the importance of confirmation when talking about certain things. Like we're talking about medical conditions that we ourselves can't diagnose that could lead us to the spirit, but then also having that confirmation coming in could help to build someone's trust in spirit, but also themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say this is not a training session, so we don't want to get too much into how you give a message. But yes, during the reading, you every 3 or 4 bits, you ask the sitter, does this make sense to you? Can you confirm? you say to them quite clearly, just give me a yes, no, or maybe, unless I specifically ask you. Now, sometimes in the message it gets too complex.
Yeah.
You know,
In the
you
message, sometimes you just have to say,
yeah,
I have a
Yeah.
jar of peanut butter and some chickens. Does that mean anything to you?
yeah. Or it's maybe like quite often I've given evidence. Okay, I mean, again, here's a really complex one. In Scottish law, you can have what's called a life rent. Now, not really relevant for what we're talking about, but that's where you own a property, you've got somebody living in the property, and that person, it could be a relative, for example. So under Scottish law, you can sign a contract with that person that says for as long as they're alive, they can live in that property. Now, I was once giving a reading to somebody it was in a circle, and I had been involved in a situation with a life rent, and I saw the person that I had done it with. I saw the paperwork that I had had a lawyer draw up. So I knew specifically that this was going to be a life rent that we were talking about. I didn't know who the person was, didn't know where the property was, but I'd already knew it was a house. So I gave them what I got. I said, look, I'm going to give you what I've got, gave them the person, gave them the life rent. Does that make any sense to you? And she came back and said, oh my God, yes, my mother's living in the house and she's elderly and she wants to give me the house, but still live there. And it's not that she doesn't trust her daughter, but she doesn't trust me to own the house and not throw her on the street the next day. So that obviously was the solution that she needed. So they had given me the solution to her. And I had to probe a wee bit to make sense of what I'd been given. I knew what I was to talk about. I just didn't know the circumstances of it. So the sitter came back and gave me the circumstances. And then I said, right, okay, I'm not a lawyer, but here's the situation I was in. Here's what I did. Does this apply to you? Yes. Oh, and she said, oh, thank God, I'm going away to see a lawyer tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Right. Well, that's us pretty much. I suppose one thing we didn't announce at the beginning, we're not, well, we did. We said we're not doing the circle after it. So if anybody wants to do reading during these, let us know in the comments and we can open up and give you a reading.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So that's pretty much about it. Whitney, do you want to run through bits and pieces at the end?
So recap the conversation we had today is what you mean?
Oh, let's talk about it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
She's still learning. Forgive her. She's still learning. It's her first
we just threw her in here tonight. So she's doing a good job so far.
Devi, I think our recruitment policy is going wrong, don't you?
Yeah, we need to give them training first.
Damn! I knew there was a problem in this. Okay, folks. If you want to come to one of the free training circles, that's the website, Scott Spirit Raining. Yes, not training, raining. There's only one T.
One T.
So Scott Spirit Raining to register for a circle. We do the free circles free every Wednesday and every Sunday. Not going to give you the times because the times don't matter. Go to that website. You'll see the AI system Rain. Just ask them, how do I book for the next circle? And Rain will give you the link for the circles.
Correct.
If you would like to know about the streaming events that we do, in the month of March, we have 4 of these conversations. So you'll get the titles, the dates in the newsletter. We have
a couple of other fun articles in there too. It's not just the dates of this stuff.
Something silly about International Women's Day. I mean, what does that have to do with spiritualism?
A lot. Find out in the newsletter.
Yeah,
could have put it better myself. With our events that we've been talking about for ages, we've got them all set up for March. Cards with Marc, yes, just one event. But you can see one of my card collection sets. I'm going to use Game of Thrones, and I'm going to sit and talk about Game of Thrones all night.
I'll be there. Trust me, I'll be there.
Or I'm going to do card walks with Marc and Ying. That's my wife. So basically, these are walks that Ying and I do at some point during the month. We were going to do them live. but it just didn't work out software wise, and it was going to be too long and too rambling. So we take the video camera out, we film ourselves. Everyone is going to be different because it literally is going to depend on where we're going, how talkative we are, whether there's a guide. So we've got two set up. We've got Riverside Museum, which is an industrial transport museum in Glasgow. It's huge. Trust me. You have to watch this video to see what, and this is a small museum for Scotland. I mean, Devi, remember that museum we went to see in Buffalo?
Oh, that was tiny.
Yeah.
That
You
was
could,
just tiny. No.
Yeah.
That's not a normal sized museum in the States.
Yeah.
That was just a tiny one.
Exactly. So these are big museums. This is a big museum. And if you come to Scotland, it's not somewhere the tourist guides are going to send you, but make a point of going to see it. And the other one is the oldest building in Scotland. So that's pretty much about it. Oh, yes. Wherever you see this, YouTube or Facebook, follow us, register with us, blah, 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 blah,
and
blah.
make sure you hit like if you're watching this on Facebook or love so more people get to see this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Please, if you got this, share it. Share. But remember, if you want to see what we're talking about in terms of how real mediums work, there's where to register. And that'll take you to Calendly, where you can actually book a place. Now, just to put this in perspective, we've got 10 people booked for tomorrow, so there's only 2 places left for tomorrow. We've got 5 people booked for Sunday at the moment, so there's about 5 or 6 places left for Sunday. And we're not planning on holding more circles, so
No, you just gotta wait. Sign up when you can get there.
wait. Okay, so I think that's about it.
That is it. So thank you all for listening and watching. We appreciate it.
And we'll see you next week. And remember, folks, it's Tuesdays.
Tuesdays.
And my God, we've gone to 37 minutes.
Yes, we have. So stop talking. Let's do the end. Let's do the finale thing.